My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 32 years old, a freelance journalist, and, until last year, a complete skeptic. I never believed in ghosts, supernatural events, or anything beyond what I could logically explain. But that changed after one assignment that still haunts me to this day. It started with a story I was investigating about a missing person in a small town called Ravenswood, located in the middle of nowhere. A 19-year-old college student named Emily Ross had vanished without a trace after driving home from a friend's house late one night. The only clue was her abandoned car found on an old, rarely used road. Locals called it the Devil's Path. According to legend, people who traveled down that road alone at night sometimes never came back. I dismissed the local superstitions, assuming it was just a tragic case of foul play. Determined to uncover the truth, I decided to retrace Emily's steps and drive the same path she had taken that night. It was past midnight when I reached the Devil's Path. The road was narrow, barely wide enough for a single car, with thick trees lining both sides. My headlights barely pierced the suffocating darkness. There were no streetlights, no houses, just the sound of my own tires crunching the gravel beneath me. The forest seemed to press in on either side, the gnarled branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. As I drove, a strange sensation crept over me, a suffocating awareness that I was not alone. The deeper I went, the heavier the air became. Then my car radio began to crackle, despite being turned off. Faint whispers slithered through the static, hushed voices overlapping in a chaotic murmur. The words were unintelligible, but there was an urgency to them, a desperation that sent chills crawling down my spine. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel, convincing myself it was just interference. But then, in my peripheral vision, something flickered, a shadowy figure standing at the edge of the road. My pulse hammered against my ribs as I turned my head, but there was nothing there. I pressed on, my unease mounting with every passing second. Then, without warning, my engine sputtered. The car lost power and coasted to a stop. A deep, oppressive silence settled over me. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to stay calm. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out, the night air chilling me to the bone. The silence was unnatural, absolute. No rustling leaves, no chirping insects. Just an overwhelming void. I popped the hood, but everything seemed fine. Then behind me, the unmistakable sound of gravel shifting beneath a footstep. I spun around, flashlight cutting through the darkness. At first, I saw nothing. But then a shape emerged from the shadows, a woman barefoot, wearing a tattered dress. Her hair hung in tangled, matted clumps, obscuring most of her face. But it was her posture that froze my blood. Stiff, unnatural, like she was struggling against invisible restraints. "Emily?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. But even as I said it, I knew something was horribly wrong. She took a step forward, and the way she moved, it wasn't right. Her limbs jerked in a disjointed, almost puppet-like manner. My breath caught in my throat. Then she spoke. Or rather, something spoke through her. The voice that emerged was layered. Emily's, but also something else, something ancient and malevolent. "You shouldn't be here." My flashlight flickered violently. My vision blurred. A sudden force slammed into me like a tidal wave, and I collapsed to my knees. My ears rang with the distant echo of screams, not from Emily, but from something deeper in the woods. The last thing I remember before everything went black was the sensation of hands, cold, skeletal hands, grasping at my arms, pulling me into the dark. I woke up in my car at dawn, parked at the entrance of the Devil's Path. My keys were in the ignition, the engine running smoothly. But my hands were covered in dirt, my clothes damp and torn as if I had been running through the woods. Emily was never found, and I never spoke about what happened that night. But sometimes, when I'm alone, I still hear the whispers, and I know whatever I encountered on that road isn't done with me yet. The nightmares started soon after that night. At first, they were just flashes, dark trees, twisted figures lurking just beyond my sight, the whispers growing louder. But soon, they became more vivid, more real. One night, I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart hammering in my chest. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. "Come back." I stared at the screen, my blood running cold. My fingers trembled as I typed a reply. "Who is this?" No response. But then outside, in the stillness of the night, I heard it, footsteps on my porch. I reached for my flashlight and crept to the window. The street was empty, but something was wrong. My car, which had been parked at the curb, was now sitting at the end of my driveway, just like it had been that morning after the Devil's Path. A sickening realization washed over me. I turned, searching for my keys, but they weren't on the table where I always left them. Instead, they were on the windowsill, next to a single wet footprint. And then, the whispers started again. I barely slept after that. Shadows stretched longer than they should, doors creaked open on their own, and my phone continued to receive messages. "Come back. She's waiting. We need you." One night, I snapped. I grabbed my coat, my flashlight, and my keys. If this thing wanted me back, I would go on my terms. The drive to the Devil's Path was a blur. I barely remember leaving my house, but suddenly I was there. The road stretched before me, darker than before, the trees seeming to lean inward as if guarding a terrible secret. I stepped out of my car, the air thick with something unseen. "I'm here," I shouted into the abyss. "What do you want from me?" Silence. Then the static started again. My phone buzzed violently in my pocket. I pulled it out, another message. It wasn't just words. It was a photo of me, standing in the woods. But I hadn't taken it. I never should have bought that mirror. It was an antique, tall and ornate, with an intricate golden frame. The store owner practically begged me not to take it. She said it was wrong, that it had a history. But I laughed it off. Old mirrors always had stories, didn't they? I placed it in my bedroom, facing my bed. That was my first mistake. The first night, I noticed something strange. As I lay in bed, half asleep, I saw movement in the mirror. Not mine, something else. A shadow, deep within the glass, shifting ever so slightly. I told myself it was a trick of the light and closed my eyes. Then the whispering started. It was soft at first, like a breeze slipping through a crack in the window. But it wasn't the wind. It came from the mirror. "Let me out." I sat up so fast my heart nearly burst from my chest. The room was empty, but the whisper echoed inside my head. My reflection stared back at me, normal, unmoving. But I swore the eyes were just a little off. The next few nights were worse. I stopped looking directly at the mirror, but I could feel something watching me from inside. I would wake up with scratches on my arms, deep and precise, as if something had reached through the glass. The whispering turned into a voice. It spoke my name. One night, I covered the mirror with a bedsheet. I felt safer. I slept. But when I woke up, the sheet was on the floor, and my reflection was smiling. That was the last straw. I grabbed the mirror, carried it outside, and smashed it into 1,000 shards. I felt instant relief, like a weight had been lifted off my chest. I swept up the pieces and threw them away, convinced it was over. It wasn't. That night, as I passed by my bathroom, I caught a glimpse of the mirror above the sink. My heart stopped. My reflection was still smiling. And then it blinked. The lights flickered. The air turned ice cold. I couldn't breathe. The last thing I heard before the darkness swallowed me whole was a voice, soft and victorious, whispering from inside the glass. "You let me out." I don't remember what happened after the lights went out. I woke up on my bathroom floor, my skin cold and damp with sweat. The mirror above the sink was shattered, shards of glass littering the tiles. My head throbbed, and for a moment, I thought maybe I had just passed out. Maybe it had all been a nightmare. Then I saw the largest shard of glass on the floor. It was still reflecting me. But something was wrong. The reflection wasn't mimicking my movements. I lifted my hand. It didn't. I blinked. It stared. And then, ever so slowly, my reflection's lips curled into a grin. "You took me out, now I take you in." I scrambled backward, but something was pulling me in, like a force wrapping around my limbs, dragging me toward the mirror shard. My fingers clawed at the floor, but it was useless. The last thing I saw before I was pulled into the glass was my own face, still smiling. But I wasn't smiling anymore. I don't know where I am. It looks like my apartment, but it isn't. Everything is reversed, as if the world has been flipped like a reflection. The air is heavy, and the colors are wrong, dull, faded, almost lifeless. The lights flicker, but they never fully go out, casting everything in a sickly, dim glow. And then there are the mirrors. They're everywhere. Every surface is reflective, windows, floors, even the walls. But when I look into them, I don't see myself. I see him. The thing that took my place. It's wearing my face, but it's not me. It watches me from the other side of the glass, grinning that horrible, twisted grin. It tilts its head, studying me like I'm some kind of experiment. Then, for the first time since I got here, it speaks. They never notice, you know. My blood turns to ice. Your friends. Your family. They never look close enough. It leans in closer, pressing its hands against the glass. But one day they will. And then, with a slow, deliberate motion, it turns off the light. I am left alone in the darkness, trapped in a world that isn't real. And out there, in my place, something else is living my life. I don't know how long I've been here. Time doesn't work the same way in this place. There's no sunrise, no clocks, nothing but the endless flickering of the dim, gray light. I don't get hungry. I don't get tired. I just exist, trapped in this reversed, hollow version of my world. But the worst part, the mirrors. They're everywhere. I've tried covering them, breaking them, even turning away, but it doesn't matter. He's always there, watching, smiling, living my life. I saw my family once, in a reflection. My mother was hugging him, laughing, completely unaware that the thing in my body wasn't me. My best friend sat across from him at a cafe, chatting like nothing had changed. No one knows, but I do. And now I think he does too, because last night something different happened. One of the mirrors flickered, just for a second. Instead of showing me my world, it showed his. I saw through his eyes my eyes. He was staring at a mirror in my old bedroom, tilting his head, as if he knew I was there. Then, he did something terrifying. He raised a hand, my hand, and he waved at me. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, but I couldn't look away. His grin widened, and for the first time, his lips moved without speaking. But I understood. Goodbye. The mirror shattered, and all the others followed, cracks splintering across the glass like veins of black ink. The world around me began to shift. The walls bent inward, the floor rippled like water, and I felt something pulling me down. I screamed, clawing at the glass shards, trying to hold on, but my hands slipped through like smoke. The last thing I saw was my reflection, not in me, staring back in wide-eyed horror. And then I woke up, back in my apartment. The mirror was whole again, standing tall and perfect, as if nothing had ever happened. The sun was shining through my window. My phone buzzed with notifications. Everything was normal, except for one thing. My reflection isn't moving. It's standing there, frozen, watching me, waiting. And when I look into its eyes, I see nothing but a dark, endless void. I never believed in ghosts. At least, not until I moved into that house. It was an old Victorian mansion, standing alone at the end of a forgotten road, shrouded in fog and decay. The price was unbelievably low, but I was desperate for a fresh start. The real estate agent told me the previous owner had simply vanished one night. I laughed it off. People disappear all the time. The first night was unsettling. The air was thick, and the wooden floorboards creaked under my every step. Then I heard it, the whispering. It started as a faint murmur inside the walls. At first, I thought it was the wind, but as the night deepened, the voices grew clearer. They were calling my name. I barely slept, but by morning, the house seemed normal again. I convinced myself it was just my imagination. Until the next night. I woke up to the sound of my bedroom door creaking open. The room was deathly cold. My breath hung in the air like mist. I reached for my phone, but it was dead. That's when I saw it. A shadowy figure standing at the foot of my bed. It had no eyes, no face, just a hollow void where its features should be. I couldn't move. My body was frozen in sheer terror. The thing leaned closer, and the whispering became a deafening chorus in my ears. I felt something cold brush against my skin, like skeletal fingers tracing my arm. Then it spoke. "You don't belong here." The next morning, I packed my things and left without looking back. I don't know what lives in that house, and I don't want to know. But sometimes late at night, I still hear the whispers, and I fear that whatever was in those walls never really let me go. Even after I left the house, the whispers followed me. At first, it was subtle, a fleeting sound in the dead of night, just as I was about to drift off to sleep. My name, barely audible, like a breath against my ear. I told myself it was just in my head, residual fear from that cursed place. But then, the whispers grew stronger. One night, as I sat in my new apartment, the lights flickered. My breath caught in my throat. The air grew thick, heavy, suffocating. I turned to look at the mirror across the room, and my blood ran cold. There was something behind me. A shadow, amorphous and shifting, darker than the blackest night. I whipped around, but there was nothing there. My reflection, however, remained frozen in place for a fraction of a second longer than it should have, watching me. That was when I knew. I had never truly left that house. The thing inside had marked me, attached itself to me like a parasite. No matter where I went, it would always be there, lurking just beyond my sight, whispering in the silence. I tried everything, cleansings, prayers, even moving to a different city. Nothing worked. The shadows stretched longer. The air always carried that faint, mocking whisper. And then the dream started. I would find myself back in that house, standing in front of the basement door. It was always locked, but in the dream, I had the key. My hand trembled as I turned it, the lock clicking open with a dreadful finality. Darkness yawned before me, and something moved in the depths. Each night, I got a little closer to stepping inside. I know deep down that one day I won't wake up from that dream. One day, I will step into the darkness, and it will swallow me whole. I can already hear it calling. Tonight, I don't think I'll be able to resist. I tried to stay awake. I fought against the pull of sleep with every ounce of strength I had left. But exhaustion is a cruel thing. It always wins in the end. When my eyes finally shut, I knew where I would be. The house, the basement door, the key in my trembling hand. But this time, something was different. The whispers were no longer just voices. They were pleading, begging me not to open the door. He's waiting. Don't let him out. You'll never leave. I wanted to turn back, to wake up. But something stronger than fear pulled me forward. My hand moved against my will, inserting the rusted key into the lock. The door creaked open, revealing nothing but an abyss of writhing shadows. A stench of rot and decay washed over me, and then, a hand shot out from the darkness. Long, skeletal fingers, black as charred bone, wrapped around my wrist with inhuman strength. I screamed, trying to pull away, but the grip tightened, burning my skin with unbearable cold. A shape loomed before me, massive and shifting, its face nothing but a gaping void. Then it spoke in a voice that was not a whisper, but a roar inside my skull. You opened the door. I woke up, but I wasn't in my apartment anymore. I was in the house. Not in my bed, not in the basement, just there, standing in the middle of that cursed place, as if I had never left. The air was thick, the walls pulsed like something alive, and the whispers were screaming. I ran for the door, but it no longer led outside. The windows were black, like they weren't even glass, just voids where reality used to be. My breath came in ragged gasps as the whispers turned into laughter, low, guttural mocking. I looked down at my hands, and my stomach twisted in horror. They were fading. My fingers blurred, dissolving into smoke, vanishing as if I had never existed. I reached for my face, but I couldn't feel it. I couldn't feel anything. Then I understood. I hadn't just opened the door in my dream. I had let something out, and in return it had taken me. Now, I am nothing but a whisper in the walls, waiting for the next one to listen. My name is Michael Hayes. I'm 35 years old, a private investigator who specializes in missing person cases. I've seen my fair share of darkness, runaways, abductions, murders, but nothing prepared me for what I encountered in Hollow Creek. It started with a simple job. A woman named Laura Bishop hired me to find her younger brother, Adam. He had gone missing 2 weeks ago after visiting an old cabin deep in the woods of Hollow Creek. The authorities found his abandoned car near the tree line, but there was no trace of him. Laura was desperate, convinced the police had given up too soon. She handed me a photograph of Adam and a crumpled piece of paper she had found in his apartment. Scrawled in shaky handwriting were the words, "It watches from the trees. Don't listen to the whispers." I should have turned down the case right then. But something in Laura's eyes, a mix of fear and determination, made me accept. I packed a flashlight, my sidearm, and enough supplies for an overnight stay. The locals warned me against going, speaking in hushed tones about the Hollow Creek woods. Tales of disappearances, strange lights, and voices calling people into the trees. I didn't believe in legends. I believed in facts. The drive was uneventful, but as soon as I stepped into the forest, I felt it, a crushing silence. No birds, no rustling leaves, just the distant hum of the wind through the skeletal branches. The path to the cabin was barely a trail, overgrown with roots and thick brush. The deeper I went, the stronger the sensation of being watched became. I told myself it was just paranoia. I reached the cabin by dusk. It was a rotting structure, its wooden walls warped with time. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Inside, a thick layer of dust covered everything. Adam's backpack lay in the corner, its contents spilled out. A journal sat open on the table, the final entry hastily written. I see it in the trees. It knows I'm here. The whispers, they tell me to stay. I have to fight it. I have to. The sentence trailed off into a jagged scribble. My stomach twisted. I searched the cabin for any clues, but there was nothing except the suffocating air of abandonment. Then a sound outside, a rustling too deliberate to be the wind. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped onto the porch. The woods were pitch black. I swept the beam over the treeline. At first, I saw nothing, but then between the trees, a shape, tall and possibly thin, with elongated limbs that barely seemed human. It didn't move, but I felt its gaze locked onto me. Then the whispers began. They slithered through the air, a dozen voices speaking at once, some pleading, some laughing, some weeping. My head throbbed with their words, incoherent yet commanding. My vision blurred, the world spinning around me. I stumbled back inside, slamming the door shut. The whispers grew louder, pressing against the walls, seeping into my bones. I don't remember passing out. When I awoke, dawn had broken. The whispers were gone. I rushed outside, searching for tracks, for proof of what I had seen. There was nothing, except the journal, now lying on the porch, open to a fresh page. The words, written in handwriting that was not mine. You listened. Now you belong. I left Hollow Creek that morning. I never found Adam. I never saw Laura again. But at night, when I close my eyes, I still hear the whispers. And I know it's only a matter of time before they call me back.